Hey everybody. This video today is going to be a bit longer, I'll admit. I usually go longer than I plan, and today I'm just planning on this being long because I want this explanation to be complete and to make sense because it's pretty important. We've been hearing a lot lately about the short squeeze, of course. It's on everybody's minds. It's why we're in this play for the most part. Right now, AMC's at about $44. So if we look over here, and well, I can't write on this apparently. Oh, that sucks. Still new with TradingView. But anyway, we look over here. It's $44. The volume last day was 52 million, and the average volume is 100 million. Because lately, believe it or not, 50 million is low for us. Now, that's one of the confusing things that Apes have been wondering. We're going, how the hell could there be 50 million shares bought, sold? Like for them to be bought, they have to be sold, right? So 50 million in volume means like that's 10% of our shares, and all the apes are supposedly diamond handing it. We're only adding onto our positions. Almost everyone we hear about in our community, anyway, the active people in the community, is just I'm adding more, I'm adding more, I'm adding more. And some of these people are adding a lot of shares. So it's very confusing to think the retail percentage could be going down from that 80% or higher it was um, to whatever it might be now. And also just the sheer number of shares that are being sold every day, which leads analysts and mainstream media to tell us, well, this short squeeze is, going to be weak at best. If it even happens, the shorts have no trouble covering. Look at that volume, 50 million, 100 million short shares out there. They could cover that in 2 days. And these 100 million volume days or 200 million some of these days or higher, they could cover that in half a day, a couple of hours, whatever. And some of our days have been really high volume, and so it's kind of scary when you think of it. You go, well, I don't want the short squeeze to be that quick. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to be panicked, all that kind of stuff. So today I decided to make a video just exploring what I think is more likely, and the fact that I think days to cover is a lot higher. If that sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned, and I'm going to do my best to explain it. If I mess it up along the way, which is very possible because I'm still learning, please let me know in the comments or add information on there. That would be great. But I'm hoping this video is helpful, and I hope it reassures apes to know the days to cover, I think, is a lot higher than it's perceived to be. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so going over to my website here, what is stock volume? So pretty simple, the amount of shares bought and sold in a day, right? It's different for different types of instruments that you're buying or selling, but for stocks, it's just how many bought and sold. Taking a look at AMC, this is on Stock Grid. It just gives an example of the total volume in a day, and it's the last day on here was September 3rd. It says 30 million. So I'm not quite sure where they get their numbers, and if they don't add up exactly to whatever brokerage or place you're getting your info, don't worry about it. It's not going to be that important for what we're going to talk about. But just to give you an example, 30 total volume, 30 million, and 12 million of that was short volume. So 40, 50, even 60% some days of the volume sold is short volume, people shorting AMC. So we can see why we have that price action. Sometimes we do with all these red lines going, and we're going, no one is selling this. This is actually people borrowing the shares, selling them for at these prices, hoping it will drop so they can buy them back and cover. The whole idea of shorting. Now, of course, when people are buying the shares, someone has to buy it if someone's selling, but they're buying them at lower and lower prices, which is dropping the price. Okay, so that's how shorting works to drop the price. Anyway, so we see a lot of it, and it's no wonder why when we see those kind of numbers for short volume, it's a heavily shorted stock, right? AMC. So we know that. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at what volume is made up of, though. So we have the short volume, we have the total volume, but a lot of that volume is high frequency trading. Now, it's hard to get an exact number. I don't know if we can differentiate. Maybe the SEC or someone with some fancy computers can actually look at what happens in the market and tell what percentage is high frequency trading. But we can see a lot of what they call barcoding, right? The price goes up and down within a very narrow time frame, just across the screen. Right, so we know that's algorithmic trading or high frequency trading, and basically it's just different companies buying and selling from each other taking pennies off it every time, buying and selling, and see who comes out ahead at the end of the day, right? So there's a lot of back and forth. We'll get into that though. So about 50% of the current volume in the US is driven by high frequency trading, and stocks like AMC and GME that are very volatile, that number probably shoots way up. I've heard some people say as high as 80-90% of AMC GME is from algos, from high frequency or ultra high frequency trading. Well, okay, so what, right? Trading's trading, volume's volume. Well, maybe not. Okay, first of all, let's take a look at the speed. So for some of the speed of these high frequency trading, or there's even ultra high frequency trading, algo traders make trades with in 10 milliseconds or less. Some say it's as fast as half a millionth of a second. That's more than a million times faster than the human brain can process. It takes between 300 to 400 milliseconds for you to blink your eye, right? And he's like, I wrote that 2 years ago. Today it's even faster. So you can imagine how fast these trades are happening and how many trades can happen in a very short amount of time. So, taking a look at this is atlas.atas.net. Sorry, not Atlas. I see what I want to see. So, they talk about high frequency traders and being market makers. People like Citadel, Virtue, there are others. But these high frequency trading market makers, they make their money off the bid ask spread. So, the more trades they can do rapidly, the more money they make. And so sometimes, even though you think your trade happened instantly, if it takes 1 or 2 seconds, that could have been millions of trades for a high frequency trading computer back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth before it lands in your lap. So your one trade could have been traded a million times in that second or two before you actually saw a blink on your screen as being going into your account or leaving your account. This hot potato volume effect, right? This is what I want to talk about. I'll come back to it later too. Opponents of high frequency trading believe that the liquidity, which is created by them, so in other words, one of the arguments for high frequency trading is it provides liquidity, meaning there is a great number of shares being bought and sold at any one time, so that if you and I want to buy or sell, the shares are there because they're such amounts flowing back and forth. Our trades will be concluded really quickly, which is kind of ironic considering we have a 2-day closing window settlement period for our trades. So if that was true, why wouldn't it be instantaneous? Why doesn't a trade just go into our account and verify that it's really there instantly, right? So what market makers and others know, of course, is this hot potato volume effect, that the volume is an illusion in a way, because the volume that's created is these same shares being traded back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. So if you take 100 shares, that could look like a million in volume. So it's kind of fake liquidity, and so it talks about that it doesn't have any depth, right? So this hot potato volume effect, where they resell to each other and other market makers, thus a big volume without a respective depth is created, right? And so that's what we're seeing with AMC, GME. The volume people are talking about and saying, we can cover that really quickly. The shorts can cover it really quickly is kind of bullshit, because really, it's a lot of this high frequency trading, a ton of it. So let's take a look at some of the numbers. I made a little slideshow here, and hopefully it makes sense. And we'll see though. So I rounded numbers that made them simpler. They're not the exact numbers, obviously. I think it's 513 million in some shares. So anyway, I made it simple. 500 million float, 100 million reported short shares. And again, this does not include synthetic, naked, rehypothecated, over and over and over again. This is just basically the short interest, right? The reported amount, which we know is very underestimated. Well, we think it is. Knowing is a strong word. So just going with this though, we'll go conservative, right? And that's better, because if we're right the conservative way, then if it goes the other way in our favor, we're thrilled, right? So with that, there are 600,000 or more shares, right? 120% of the float. The real float plus the extra short interest, the shares that are borrowed, still owned by someone and then sold again, right? So that's 120% of the float. So the reported ownership, I'm going by institutional because that's reported. Retail isn't really reported. We can't go out there and add up all of us that own it and come up with a number. So if I just take 100% and subtract 25% that institutional own, we get 75% retail. Some people say, oh, well, it was 80% people. Yeah, well, the numbers can change, right? People buy, people sell. To say no one sells is ridiculous. People do sell. Not everybody's a diamond handed ape that bought AMC over the summer or in the spring. Anyway, looking at the volume here, a couple of different examples: a 50 million volume day and a 100 million, which is our average volume right now. Okay, so assuming there's 10 million in volume comes from day trading, 10 million in apes and institutions and whoever else buying and selling, and 30 million or about 60%, right, of algos and high frequency trading. And I just doubled the numbers over here. So for 100, that'd be 20, 20, 60. Okay, so those are just some examples. So in a 50 million day, 10 could be day trading and 10 could be this and 10 could be that for the volume we see. Now, take a look at this. Day trading, 1 million shares. So a day trader, they're buying the dips and selling the rips, right? So they may buy and sell multiple times in a day. So let's say day traders, all of them combined, just to pick a number, we're buying and selling 1 million shares. So they buy that same million 5 different times in the day and they sell it 5 different times in the day. That adds up to 10 million shares of volume, but only 1 million original shares were ever involved in there. They just bought and sold them repeatedly, and so the volume increases with that, right? It's amplified. So that's something to think about. High frequency and ultra high frequency trading. We talked about how fast it was and how they make their money. I just did a little bit more in there, right? So it's a lot of money, especially in volatile stocks like AMC and GME, because the price changes so quickly and they could get these big spikes and dips. And so that bid ask really widens and closes quickly too. So they can make a lot more money with these stocks. And so we can assume that high frequency, ultra high frequency trading is happening way more than 50% in AMC and GME. It could be the majority of the trades, to be honest, on the day. We look at how they go together, AMC and GME and others, and we know there's a computer program just going up and down and up and down, selling and buying to other computer programs, and we're not really involved. We're just buying and holding and watching this unfold. So the only way we're going to overwhelm that is a ton of buying pressure and FOMO, right? So until apes step in and institutions step in and really buy en masse and push those algos out of the way, they're just going to go up and down, and they control the price only to that extent, right? They can't control a ton of people buying and willing to buy at higher and higher prices. That will change the price. But that's the only thing. The math, right? We talk about that, how many millions of times in a second, right? 1 to 2 million times in a second at those high speeds that they estimate some are capable of. That doesn't mean all of them are. And so that speed could be quite a bit lower, like 1,000 times lower or something, and still be really, really fast, right? So I did it at that extreme just to see what's possible. So 1,000 shares times 1 million shares in a second that could be traded, or 1 million trades in a second, sorry, is 1 billion shares in a second. So you can imagine, right, how much trading could happen in a day. So quite obviously, we don't see that kind of volume. So the speed is probably overestimated, or maybe the shares are overestimated, or both. Or I'm just missing something. So if I'm missing something major here of how this could work, please let me know. But we know these computers can buy and sell really quickly, and they can sell to each other. So these funds do buy and sell to each other and try to make money off that bid ask spread. It's not just retail institutions they're buying and selling from. And so really we have this rehypothecation on steroids, right? What does that mean for AMC? Well, the average daily volume is calculated over 20 to 30 days. So that 100 million we see isn't this past week's volume, which is pretty low, right? So if the days to cover was calculated just on the other day's volume, that 50 million, then the days to cover would be 2, not 0.6 like it is now. But because they're using the average daily volume, it's 0.6. I'm not quite sure how, since it's 100 million shares and the volume, average volume is about 100 million. It should be about a day. But hey, Cortex, Intel, please explain. So if the true volume, though, from what we were talking about, so if we're looking at that hot potato effect with day trading and high frequency trading, the true volume is a lot lower. The days to cover gets a lot higher, right? It's not that number that we keep hearing in the media. So I'm using reported numbers, right? And being pretty conservative with the short interest being 100 million shares. So if we look at that and we say the actual shares that are traded a day are, 10 million, 10 million from actual trades, a few million more from day traders, some high frequency trading, and put it at 20. That's still 5 days to cover, a 5 day short squeeze, right? So the fact that these guys are going on the news and saying, hey, oh yeah, these guys, the shorts can cover in hours. Well, it sounds to me a bit, either they don't understand any of what I'm talking about, or I'm dead wrong and none of this makes any sense. Or maybe they're in bed with the people that pay their salaries and own these media companies and, also just they hang out with, right? That's their buddies. And, I don't think anyone who's paid to talk for a living is usually too smart. There are some exceptions, but these people out here, they know their little corner and they just make up the rest. But I think a lot of it is just designed to scare us out of our positions and get us out of there and believe that this short squeeze is not as viable as we think it is. But from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing with the information about volume, I think it is, right? Bottom line, we're assuming and we're guessing a lot. Short positions don't have to be reported by market makers and hedge funds on their 13Fs. So we don't know how much they're shorting. We know the short interest that's reported to brokers, but not all of the brokers report. So if Ortex gets 85% of brokerage reporting, what if that 15% who don't are the ones they use because they don't report? And also, or they're the biggest, or they keep things quiet. They don't want that information getting out there. Of course, you're going to use the ones that don't report. And so that short interest could be vastly underestimated because if I'm a hedge fund that doesn't want the short interest known, and I don't want a short squeeze to happen, I'm not going to use brokerages that report to Ortex. Plain and simple. That just makes sense. So looking at the reported numbers, the days to cover is a lot higher than a few hours or even a few days, right? The volume, of course, will spike with FOMO, but we're not really worried about that because that's not selling volume. Yes, there'll be some selling, but that's buying pressure. That's going to drive the price up. So, and once that price starts going up, people are just going to be stop buying less and less and less and just holding because they can't afford to keep buying. The only ones that are going to buy are the ones who are getting margin called, and are the shorts, right? The hedge funds, the market makers, the other people who are short on the stock, they're going to get margin called because the interest is going to be too high. They're not going to have the capital to back up the collateral to back up their positions. You can't just keep shorting a stock that's worth billions of dollars if you don't have the money to pay for it somewhere, right? To cover it. So, yeah, they're in trouble as soon as that price starts spiking. So, we definitely need buying pressure. We need some FOMO. And once that volume comes up, that's not the volume we worry about. So, where some people are really conflicted in saying, hey, like I know Claybro will say, I want low volume because that increases the days to cover. And I'll hear, Review Door, Gabe, and others say, we want high volume because, of course, that's going to make the price go up because people are buying. Both are right, right? We want an increased buying pressure. We want that buying volume, and we want that true buying volume. But what we are neglecting is that there's not a lot of true selling volume, which is good for us. And it's the shorts, they need sell volume. And yes, there are buyers and sellers, but at the same time, if people are selling for higher and higher prices, that's not a bad thing for us, right? That's going to drive the price up and put those big short positions underwater. And that's what we want. And once the FOMO sort of dies down a bit, the price is still up there, right? It's not going to start dropping because people are going to diamond hand, they're not going to sell. And that's where the volume starts going down and we wait for the shorts to start covering. And that's where Claybro gets his low volume, but the high volume is what we need with the FOMO to start driving the price up initially. So both to me are true and make sense to me. So I hope that makes sense to you and I'm not just talking in circles. Have no fear, apes. The squeeze will be long and painful for shorts. The true daily volume, and maybe that could be a new acronym, the TDV, is much lower than it appears. The true short interest is much higher than it appears because we don't have full reporting. It's estimated, it's reported, and also, right, there are so many other variables in there with futures and days to cover. I'd like to dig into more about futures because when we see GME and AMC moving together, but they're not in any ETFs together that we know of, there's no real explanation for that other than we have algos that are just tying them together and they're combined in these swaps and futures and different things that I totally don't understand yet. And that's what's driving the price action up and down. Anyway, That's it. These are all, educated guesses. I'm using data from different sources just to take a look at it, and just my limited knowledge of the market and how the different types of trading work. But to me, it makes sense that if we are pretty confident that the majority of apes aren't selling, these volumes have got to be an illusion more than they are substance. So I think I've explained it. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, or I messed it up and you can explain it better, please drop comments down below. And don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, share this, and hope this gets around, because the more people that are confident in the squeeze, the better it will go for all of us. And yeah, have a good long weekend and take care of each other. And we'll see you on the flip side.